What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Warp Factor Fiction, a chronological rewatch of the Star Trek franchise. We love it. We're all here for all of it. That's right. This is episode 18. We're still infantile in all of this. We have so much to go through. We started with Enterprise seasons 1 through 4. We went into Discovery seasons 1 and 2. Then we went into Strange New World seasons 1 and 2. Then we took 2 months off. We didn't do any Star Trek rewatch. Well, we did a lot of Star Trek rewatching, but we didn't talk about it. We had 2 great episodes that were live, though. We did an unboxing and a Trek gift guide. Go check them out. They were a lot of fun, and they're up on the podcast now. This is a Patreon show. Got to be a part of Patreon to see it early. We will put it up on the YouTube after a couple of months, so that way you can check it out, and it will be available in podcast format, so you can check it out or listen anywhere. We appreciate you doing that. But if you guys want to, please head over, and you can be a part of it. I will urge you to go and check out in the link tree down below our Discord. We have a great community there. It's free. It's open to join right now. Once we hit 300, we're going to close it off, and only patrons can join. So you might want to join in and start having fun discussions and being part of fun watches and everything else. We talk about Star Trek and so much more, because the Scene Snobs is all about that entertainment. All right, guys, let's get into it. Thanks for coming back after this long break. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
I'm so glad we could be here. So for 2 months we took off. Like, we did our live shows, but like we weren't talking about Star Trek, and we were watching TOS, the original series.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get started and we do our kind of guide of going through the first half of season 1. That's how this works here. You get 2 episodes a month, and we cover half a season in each. Unless it's like a 10-season show, then we might just do one in all. The movies will be one show, but we're gonna have some very special guests and stuff planned, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I want to ask you, what is it like so far? You know, you're 11 now. For you, watching the original series, something came out in the 60s. A lot of kids don't tend to gravitate towards that. How do you feel about the show overall as you've been watching it?
It definitely is dated. It's not like new Star Trek. It's not even like the Next Generation. It's very different than everything else that I've seen.
Well, and so I don't want you to say which one's better or not, because I feel like there's room for everything, and it's such a rich history. Having watched Enterprise, let's go with this question first. Having watched Enterprise, Strange New Worlds, and even Discovery, because they all took place before this, but this is the quintessential. This is the pinnacle, right? What are your feelings on it? Like, how do you feel compares to those? Do you think it holds up, or do you think that it lacks in comparison? And I'm not just talking about the look and the feel, but I'm talking about the actual Trek that it set forth.
I mean, this one's always going to have to be above those, because this is the original, so it's always going to be held in high regard.
But do you hold it in personal high regard? Do you think that this is a worthy show to stand up to the rest?
It should not have gotten a 4th season, which it didn't, so it should have been canceled when it did.
I will admit, in this rewatch, like, a lot of the crazy weird episodes that I think people can tend to like touch down on, not the famous ones. I'm talking about like the real, like Lincoln. You I don't even think you got there yet, but like that's a famous episode, and some others. It really, like, they've even in the first 2 seasons, like the 3rd season, I understand why they were canceled after that. It wasn't. I don't think it was the actors' faults. They still put on great performances. They still knew this world that they were in. I don't even know that it was the producer's fault. I would probably blame too much interference by executives, in my opinion. I don't know the true story, but if I had to, I would go that route. You know what I mean? So, but for you, again, I grew up on this. Like, there was, I think the closest thing to it at the time when I was growing up, like, was Star Wars on a big screen, but that was different. That was the big screen. When you compared TV to movies, you weren't going to hold Gilligan's Island from the 60s to the same, like, esteem that you would hold like The Godfather. Like, they're not going to look the same. They're not going to do the same. Or even comedy wise, if you keep it in there, it's not going to be like Ace Ventura. Like, there's more money going into it. There's more star power, things like that at the time. But I got to say, when it comes to TOS, it still feels very cinematic for its time. Granted, we're watching it remastered, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's definitely more cinematic than some other things of the 60s that I've seen. It looks more 70s in special effects wise, but it definitely feels like the 60s, just the way that they use it.
Yeah. The remastered really helps for it to match up nicely, especially with the movies. I think when, personally, for me, when I think of Star Trek in terms of how it looks, TNG is sort of like the staple. I feel like all of like the look and feel and vibe and the storylines kind of more mirror themselves off of TNG, because that was the more popular of the shows. versus TOS, but I do. There's something about these fun adventure ones, and I forgot how awesome each character is. They own it. Like you can make fun of Shatner, you can say all this stuff, but like he was a great captain.
Mhm.
And so how do you feel about seeing the sort of like friendship unfold in front of your eyes? Because you've seen the movies, but like do you understand Wrath of Khan more, the ending now? You know, like we'll get to that
Yeah.
with the review, but like you get why it's so deep by that point and why 3 it's like so desperate to try and get there.
Mhm.
I love that feel. I love that vibe of it all. And I've got to tell you, TNG makes me feel this way too. But like, there's something about rewatching the old TOS. Like everything else we've rewatched or I've seen, this might be my favorite series because it was the most unrestricted in terms of story. Like this was early world building. There was nothing else to set this up against. You know, in terms of sci-fi movies, sure, but or TV shows, sure, but I mean, in terms of Star Trek, there's even other movies and TV shows were not telling the same story Star Trek was. They're on a
Yeah.
whole different
Definitely.
plane. That's why they're still here. That's why they still exist, in my opinion. But yeah,
That's
I love it.
I liked it too. It's just it would have definitely. I think if they kept the same story, but if they remade this, it would not be anywhere near as good as it is.
No, I think you needed that right amount. Even with all the turmoil off the set and stuff like that, you hear those stories, and we don't really talk about that stuff here because that's not what this is about. This is an appreciation of Trek franchise. But it's hard pressed to not, at least when you're watching the original series, realize there was some turmoil. Like, you know, that some of the actors didn't like each other and stuff like that. But they really, when they were on camera, they pulled this off. And you had some, you brought some facts to it. What's the fact that you just shared with me? Because, well, actually, before you share it, let me share what I noticed, and that was Chekhov is widely known as the famous for being the navigator on the Enterprise in this time era. He didn't come in until season 2. We know that because there's a widely known mistake from Wrath of Khan, and we'll get there when we get there. But Sulu was always there, but Sulu wasn't always the helmsman. But it's always widely thought about because of the movies that it was Sulu and Chekhov. But I don't think I saw them together sitting at the console until season 3 for like one episode, and I don't think I've seen them since. So I'm still in season 3 through my rewatch. I'm gonna look. Maybe I'm wrong, and if anybody's watching or listening, and you can say an episode in season 2 where they were together at the console on the bridge, I would love to hear it. Please let me know because I'll go back and check it out. But I was looking for it and I didn't see it. But you looked something up, and I'm anxious to hear what you've uncovered.
So there's this guy Eddie Paskey. He's in a lot of stuff. He was in Mission Impossible. He's most known for playing Lieutenant Leslie, but I think he had some other roles in Star Trek. And he was in more episodes than Sulu was.
And did he play the helmsman? So was he at the console too?
I don't know.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. I love that you said that too. But like he doesn't get mentioned, and you don't really see him that much, or after the show ended. So it's interesting to say why they didn't pick this, that, or the other thing. I will say this: he was probably a friend of Leonard Nimoy's because Leonard Nimoy started on Mission Impossible as well. You know, so that's where his star rose. Whereas I still kind of like William Shatner. Like I remember from the Twilight Zones, and he was big on stage and he did some stuff. But like I felt like Leonard was the bigger star at the time. And we were actually having a debate about something. I want to throw something out to you before we get into the episodes. So we have all these faces that are very. They're almost like the face of Trek in a lot of ways. But if you had to pick one face, like one person to embody, like when you see him, that's like, this is Star Trek. This represents everything about Star Trek that we're trying to show. Like when you see that person, they are the literal face of it. What character throughout the history would you say that is?
So all history or in TOS?
All history.
Because I feel like the meaning of Star Trek changed from TOS to TNG.
I don't think it ever changed. I think it grew with time, like it evolved. That's why they set TNG so far in the future. But when you watch the movies, it didn't change much, but it did change even then.
Maybe like George Takei or Jonathan Frakes.
Well, no. I don't mean the actors. I mean the characters. Like, so if you were going to throw up and just be like, all right, for anybody who may not know what Star Trek is, like, what's a character you throw up and they'd be like, that's Star Trek. I know that. Like, a good representative to be like, that's the face of Trek, you know?
The face of Trek is probably Kirk, but I think Sulu would be a good face of Star Trek as well because he has kind of that mix.
Here's my argument. I would say Spock. I'd say Spock transcends the time of Star Trek because he was in TNG, he was in the new movies and stuff like that. I think, in my opinion, he just did. He owned it. Like even watching the show, like whether he liked what he was doing or not, he was an actor about it. He went into it, like, because you can see Shatner and Kirk, but he's great. You can see all the actors in them. It's just, but there's something about Spock. Like when I see Leonard Nimoy in that outfit, like he is Spock. And plus, he directed a lot of the movies too, so that helps as well. So like I don't know, but I like that idea, and I like that you said Sulu or Kirk. Those are good choices, and we all went TOS, which is kind of funny. We both went TOS. All right, you ready to? You got any more tidbits for me?
Not really. No.
All right, we'll roll around. We might find some in the episode. So, all right, guys. So on September 8th, 1966, the first episode, the pilot episode, but not the true pilot, we'll get there in just a second, was what had premiered, and that's why it's Star Trek Day. That's right, The Man Trap. That was the first episode that premiered on television in September 8th, 1966, but that is not the first episode we're going to start off with. We watched on Paramount Plus, and there was an original pilot with a different crew besides Spock on the Enterprise, and it was Captain Pike, played by Jeffrey Hunter. Number one was played by Joe Barrett. I'm sorry, Uhura was there. Uhura was there as well. But Spock was a big carryover as one of the main leads. That's why more so what I meant. But everybody else was sort of different. Nobody else really there that we knew, and it was just a different kind of episode, but still very Trek. It's still mixed. It's still matched well. I thought Jeffrey Hunter did a great job as Captain Pike, and he really set a tone that we see now transcend into Anson Mount as Pike, as we've talked about in the first two seasons. But that's where we're starting. So it's not actually episode 1, it's episode 0. And then we are going to go in this episode all the way up to episode 15. And the reason that is because with episode 0, that makes 30, and we're going to get there. So the first episode we're talking about tonight is season 1, episode 0, The Cage. Captain Pike is held prisoner and tested by aliens who have the power to project incredibly lifelike illusions. Getting into this one, so I liked the episode. I don't like the crew as much as the original crew, but I do like that they have been set a precedence in this, and I enjoyed the spirit of it throughout. I also liked how connected to Anson Mount's character it is, even though Anson Mount's Pike takes place 10 years even before this episode happens. So I dug it, and actually this episode takes place I think 3 to 5 years before Kirk takes over. So it's a long time. It's a long time in between. We see a lot of differences, but an older, grizzled, more jaded Pike I really enjoyed. I would love to hear your take on it, considering you just came off a big Pike show.
It was a good episode. It was kind of fun. It was different than the rest. It was definitely different than the rest of this season.
So yeah, and for me, it was different because they changed the tone. Of course, that's what happens with pilots. Sometimes you'll film one and then you'll send it to the executives and they'll be like, listen, we want this, and change. Focus groups get involved, things change out. So that's ultimately what happened here, and then they reshot it. So on this, is this a high episode for the season for you?
I mean, yeah, it's not one of the 3 highlight episodes, but it's kind of high up there.
Very cool. All right, it's not one of my 3 highlights either. I like it. I'm glad again it set precedence because we have Strange New Worlds. Without the Cage, we don't have Strange New Worlds, and I do think that is a great show on track. Oh yeah, what's up?
Who's the better Pike, Hunter or Mount?
Mount has more time, but but also Bruce Greenwood played Pike in the movies, and I thought he did a really good job. I gotta be honest, I'm not sure who I would say. I would not. No. I would definitely say Anson Mount's the better Pike, but you gotta put an asterisk up there somewhere because Jeffrey Hunter only got to do 1 episode. So he never really got to explore it, but within this episode, it was explored. He was he was a captain who was tired, and they talked about the Regillian War, and they talked about all this stuff, and it added a lot of layers that even going forward and Kirk's it didn't feel like it was let's all jump to conclusion. A lot of times back in the day, it was well, this must be what's happening, and it's well, it's a little fantastical as an explanation, but not in this one. I thought they did a good job. All right,
something I did notice about the Cage is when he's on the stairs running away from the warrior in his dream, his spear bends. The blade of his spear bent.
Yeah, but that might have been I would have to read up on it, so I'm not sure that because it would probably be an illusion, so like it shouldn't, but it might have just been a lot of the stuff was like early sets. They were made flimsy out of stuff. And you weren't really supposed to get too tough with it, and he probably did, you know. All right. Well, where does this what's a big takeaway you got from this episode? And who's your shining character? Because I'd really like to hear that one with the old crew.
It's Pike. No one else really stood a shot. Like, no one else was in it enough, really.
Yeah, they didn't give enough for number one to do, which was kind of sad because I do think Rebecca Romaine kills it with that character now.
So, my lesson from this was don't trust everybody, because like the survivors, like they all get all trust and stuff, but you can't trust everybody.
Well, I always, but I'm gonna ixnay that because not in life, not in life, but on Star Trek, every episode they show up on planets with a lot of trust, and I think that's an important distinction between other maybe space travel shows, things like that, where there's not a lot of trust. I think that's done on purpose to walk in and just say we're explorers. I'd rather come in here with no expectation that you're going to hurt me, be armed just in case, see what we can do, but ultimately I would really like it if we can, you know, like I'm here for peace. I want to, this is trust. You know, if I'm showing you trust, please show me trust. So I got that feeling from it. And I like that because it's very different from how Enterprise handles things. And even Strange New Worlds, but I do think Pike handles that in that way. You know, but we see that. And I think that's what I think these retcons really helped this original series in that. Gene Roddenberry had this, they're explorers. They're going to go to these planets. They're going to go peacefully, and it's just going to be, you know, that's the way we're going to do it. Like, so, and I've always appreciated that about Star Trek, not going into any situation guns drawn, expecting something unless you're at red alert.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I felt like there was a really good trust there for that. So, and they always continue that. That was always sort of went out through universally through Star Trek. So I got to kind of argue with you there. I think that was I don't know that that's the right takeaway for Star Trek. I understand it because in life that's a good takeaway, but Star Trek, I think you should be trusting that's what adds that element of hopefulness. But all right, let's go on to season 1, episode 1, The Man Trap, premiered Thursday, September 8th, 1966. Dr. McCoy discovers an old flame is not what she seems after the crew members begin dying from a sudden lack of salt in their bodies. I liked this episode, but I didn't think it was a strong start. It was good, it was different, and I guess maybe for the 60s I would have had to watch it with those eyes, but it just wasn't one that like really stood out to me as like this something I really needed. You know, like I really wanted to see start. And I shouldn't say needed, but like because it's still a fun story, but like something I would wanted to see for the first one. I might have tuned out if I had watched this first one brand new. What did you think of it?
I did not like it. It had a good villain, but that was like it. I feel like they should have done more with it.
Yeah, it was interesting because when and I felt the same way. Like I was like, the villain's cool. And I like how it kind of plays out, and we start on the planet, goes into the ship, and it makes sense. And I liked the acting in it. The acting was very good. There's some good elements to it, but I just didn't think it was. There's so many great stories in Star Trek, especially those first 2 seasons. Hell, especially that first season. Like this one just seems like really weak. And for your first one, like I don't know, it just kind of threw me off a little bit. All right, well, what's a big takeaway from this one? Who's your highlight character?
Big takeaway. This is the one time I'm doing it this season, is things are not always as they seem. Because in this one, Nancy Crater is a salt-sucking monster.
It's true. And you know, I can't really argue with that one. Thank you so much. You don't have to do it for this season. You can do it again, but like maybe just like not everyone. My highlight character for this is Kirk. Kirk really shined, which is funny because I watched them back to back. And for anybody, we were talking about The Cage didn't premiere until 1986. Nobody saw that. That was a rejected pilot. We started with The Man Trap. Like now, some people may have had it on tape or something because it circulated, but it premiered on a valid VHS in 1986. So nobody really got to see that episode. So being able to watch them back to back, I got to see that. And The Man Trap was actually the weakest of the two, which is ironic that it kind of kept going on from that. But going into episode 2, Charlie X. Captain Kirk must learn the limits of the power to the powerful. Oh, excuse me for a sec. Season 1, episode 2, Charlie X. Captain Kirk must learn the limits to the power of a 17-year-old boy with the psionic ability to create anything and destroy anyone. So this is a very Twilight Zone-y type of episode. I honestly feel like this one sort of was a way to appeal to the audience a bit. I'm not saying, because they were all filmed together, so it's not like, oh, they knew the Man Trap would maybe not be a weaker one and this would be stronger. I just mean it. This one pretty much solely takes place on the ship. You get a lot more of, but it is like there's a supernatural element to his psychic abilities and kind of how everything plays out. I like this episode, but I like this episode because of the planning. Like having to try and figure out how to stop this kid. I didn't particularly like the villain, the kid who played Charlie. I was just kind of like, it wasn't that great. But I did like the crew in this. What did you think of this episode?
It was a lot better. They should have started with this one over the Man Trap.
I feel like it would have set a different tone, though. I feel like if you were going to start this series, and really because it starts with the Man Trap, you have to start it with them going on a field mission, or you screw your tone. Personally,
true.
So like I do feel like a one that was solely on a ship. I'm glad it did come later, but yeah, I don't know that, because I think like the next like two are solely ships, but we'll get into that. I have to look into my notes. But yeah, Charlie X I thought was a fun episode, very Twilight Zone-y and feel, which was an homage to, I don't know if it was an official homage, but it feels like a send up to William Shatner's episodes of Twilight Zone. And I dug it. I liked how it was played. It was played very smart while you had something fantastical going on.
Mhm.
Who's your highlight character in this? Mine was Kirk. And what is he just, I think he's going to be a lot in this, either he or Spock for the most part, because they are the leads. It was very demanding, but there's some other good ones.
I have like 4 or 5 people in total.
Yeah, Scotty's definitely getting on there for a few. I think I fell in love with Scotty even more on this watch as an adult. He might, I don't know if he's my favorite, but he's up there. I love, after this, Scotty, and just seeing who he was through these seasons, like, it's just wonderful. All right, so what's your takeaway?
Kids, doesn't matter what powers you have, you're still not as good as the adults.
That's your takeaway?
I thought it's one you'd like, because that's kind of what you...
Is that what you think I think? No. No, I learn a lot from you and your brother, and I think you can learn a lot from kids. So no, I don't think it's always listen to adults. My takeaway from this would be, as we grow, we experience different things, right? And we're going to always experience these different things. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Sometimes they might be good, but they might make us feel weird or bad because we don't understand it. But it is always important to act in a way that you don't jeopardize your principles, your values, or your character, because then you can really dismiss your integrity, and that's an important thing to hold on to. And now I realize that's like a very high thing, but Kirk was really trying to get through to Charlie, and he was really, and Kirk, a man of action, keeps 2 men around him at all times, one that sets off very easily in McCoy, and one that is very stoic and very logical in Spock. And I think he does that because he realizes that his ego can get in the way. Even at one time, he realized this guy was unstoppable, and he goes, I'm going to take him down. And it's like, what? Like, no, you're not. Like, you can't even get close to him. Like, for some reason, like, he's just, it's his ego that gets there, but it's like, that's why he keeps these people around him. So I think I think Kirk's way of handling it was like, I can't just knock this kid out and, like, drop him off somewhere. Like, he's a power that needs to be taken care of and shown respect and love, but also discipline. So I really love the parenting angle of this, but there's definitely some datedness to it. So for sure. But all right, let's go on to season 1, episode 3, Where No Man Has Gone Before, and that premiered Thursday, September 22nd, 1966.
The flight recorder of the 200-year-old USS Valiant relays a tale of terror, a magnetic storm at the edge of the galaxy.
You read that very well, even though I messed up twice, and then we had to do a take where you do it. No, thank you. I appreciate that. This episode, I gotta be honest with you, because it was November when we started watching this episode. I do remember it. I don't remember it enough to really, like, I don't know if I like this then, because like, it wasn't one that really stuck out to me. Like, I have notes on the ones I really enjoyed throughout the season. And this one, I just really couldn't really drum up anything that threw out to me. What'd you think of this episode?
I couldn't remember much, but I remember that it was good. It's not highlight. It might have been if I could have remembered it.
But that's what I'm saying, because like there's so many episodes just by sitting back and thinking about them, looking at the titles. I'm like, I remember, oh yeah, I really enjoyed this about it and this and the characters and stuff. This one is just like lost on me. I'm like, I know I watched it. I remember the episode, but it just wasn't as much fun. Although I will tell you, the chess scene was pretty cool, and the reuse of the sweaters, which we didn't really get a lot of after that.
Sure.
So there's some notable things, but like I guess Kirk is my favorite. Spock, because of the I'm going to make Spock my highlight character because I did like the chess scene.
I'm going to make Kirk, and you know the one man who's like saying he's a god, Kirk's friend?
Yes, I can't remember his name though.
Neither can I. So he made Kirk a headstone, right? And it read James R. Kirk.
Yes, I'm glad you caught up on that, because that was a big mess up. I've heard that before, where it was kind of thrown away because his middle name is Tiberius. That's the canon, you know. So I wouldn't mind seeing.
It's a canon event.
It's true. So all right. So I guess I'll say Spock. Did you have a takeaway from this episode? Because we're having a hard time even like really wanting to drum up, and I'm like getting excited for the next episode to talk about. So I got to hold on to that.
Nobody's really a god, because people say, because in this one they're gods, and then they still get beat.
Yeah, and they were outsmarted. Yeah, it's their hubris that really kills them. But all right, let's jump on to season 1, episode 4, The Naked Time. The crew is infected with a mysterious disease that removes people's emotional inhibitions to a dangerous degree. This one affected. This is the one where it's most famous, I think, for introducing Sulu in the fencing. The famous scene where he's running around the ship and he's fencing with people. Well, he's trying to, and they're running away. I don't blame him. And on lots of other elements to this, I just had a really good time with. This is a great Star Trek episode. I would put this. I will reveal at the end, but this might be in my top 5.
It probably is in mine as well.
It's such a good episode. What was one of your favorite elements of this one?
It was a good episode. It was one of the best episodes. It's not the best episode. It was amazing. I like the inhibition part, how they like get rid of that. And it really shined on a lot of characters that haven't gotten time yet, which I think was good. It was more of a character development episode, but it did it really well, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I like that a lot. It is a really good character development episode. Like you said, they'll introduce a lot of backstory, just elements, implications for Sulu and other players in it. It wasn't just about the 3, which was nice. You added so much more to it. So yeah, I really like this one. Who's your highlight character in The Naked Time? Sulu, really? I would go again with Kirk. I thought he did a fantastic job in this one. All right, and what's your takeaway from this?
Is inhibitions are all like, trust your gut, but don't trust it completely, because in this
it's take out the truth. Look for the logic, right?
Yeah,
I like it. All right, season 1, episode 5, The Enemy Within. A transporter malfunction splits Captain Kirk into 2 halves, one meek and indecisive, and the other violent and ill-tempered. The remaining crew members stranded on the planet cannot be beamed up to the ship until a problem is fixed. I had a good time with this one. There's a lot of pressing pressures on the timing, like having to save the people down on the planet, but they have to get the transporter figured out. Kirk is running all around in 2 different areas doing 2 different people. You got a dog dressed in a furry costume. The whole thing is wild. In fact, that dog is that's famous for being a horrible alien. But I still love it. Well, it's adorable. I mean, it goes under for adorable, but and a good boy or girl. I'm not sure which one it was, or both of them really. But but it isn't a good alien. I mean, do you think that's like a really well presented alien in television?
Yes.
You do. I bet you do. I like this episode. It wasn't one of my favorites, but I did enjoy it. I thought the duality of Kirk. This is one of the ones where you could point to and be like, William Shatner is a good actor. He deserved this role. He did a great job. He's my highlight character for that fact. Like, it's just well done. What did you think about this? I like the pressure episodes where it's like a timing issue.
So do I. And just one thing that was like super funny about this episode is like the evil Kirk looks like super emo, because it's like he has eyeshadow all around his eyes and he's like just angry all the time.
Yeah, they did give it a little look with the eyeshadows just to kind of make it a little more evil, because they did it, I think, in the Mirror episode as well.
I don't remember that, the eyeshadow. that.
I have to double check, but I thought they did. But they didn't show much of Kirk from the Mirror episode in it. You know, like they show him for like a second freaking out and like Spock knew. So it was always a funny one for me. All right, who's your highlight character and what's the takeaway?
Kirk, and there's two sides to every story / person / coin.
Yeah, because once they bring them back together, like they need both sides. Both sides are what make him such a decisive and good captain. All right, season 1, episode 6, Mudd's Women. So Harry Mudd finally shows up. The Enterprise picks up an untrustworthy entrepreneur, Harry Mudd, accompanied by 3 beautiful women who immediately put a spell on the all-male crew members. This was a fun episode. It was cool to have Harry Mudd there. I like this. I think this is one that stands out as a good one. It's not one of my favorites, but I do like the Harry Mudd character. He's a fun villain. In fact, I don't like the one from Discovery. I just want to point that out before you share yours. Because I like this Harry Mudd better. But please proceed. I'd love to hear it.
I don't like this episode.
Really? Why not?
I feel like it was the same thing as the Orion. I mean, I saw Enterprise first, so it felt like the Orion episode. It felt like a copy because I saw Enterprise first.
Yeah.
In the one episode where the Orions put a spell on everybody, it's a copy of this episode, but I saw that first, so I was like, oh, this is just a copy of it.
Well, now that you know that, and logically you can say like, well, this did come out first. Which one do you think that changes your opinion?
I'm always gonna think that it's a copy of the Enterprise one because I saw that one first.
Yeah, I guess it kind of sticks in your head. But even though with your feelings on it, who was your highlight character and what's your takeaway?
Kirk was my highlight character, and not everything.
You say it, I swear to God.
It's not.
We know it's not what it seems. What else? Don't trust a guy named Harry. That's my takeaway.
Don't trust a guy
named Mudd.
Don't trust a guy named Harcourt Fenton.
Don't trust a guy named Harcourt Fenton Mudd. Mudd. Your last name's Mudd, dude.
And your middle name is Fenton.
Fenton
You sound like that scientist from DuckTales.
Yeah. Gizmo Duck, the second greatest hero in Duck history. We know
Who's the first?
I'm sorry. Did you say who's the first?
That's
Do you want to get dangerous? Do you want to get dangerous? Is that what's
third? That's third. We all know Howard the Duck is the best.
Yeah, I know you're obsessed with wanting to watch that movie and you don't realize how wrong you are, but that's your problem.
No, not that movie. I don't want to watch the movie. I just mean Howard the Duck as a character is the greatest duck.
I watched that movie when I was probably younger than you. And yeah, now I realize I can't ever let you watch that movie until you're older.
Why?
Find out. So I will take that as a good takeaway. Don't trust a man named Mudd. Don't trust. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a shirt that says "Don't trust a man named Mudd." All right. Season 1, episode 7. What are little girls made of? Nurse Chapel is reunited with her fiance, but his new obsession leads him to make an android duplicate of Captain Kirk. I liked this episode. This was a good episode, in my opinion. I like that Nurse Chapel got some shine on this too.
It seems too much like the Man Trap, except
Really?
you switch McCoy with Chapel.
I mean, it's similar. You're going to find a lot of similar stories back in the day, though. There wasn't I don't know. I don't know how they worked it back in the day. Like, there's a kind of a factory of writing, but okay, if it is, I didn't like the Man Trap, and I really like this one. So, if anything, it's a better told story.
It's better than the Man Trap. I didn't like this one either. I didn't like either of
Really, I loved because the Nurse Chapel got some shine, but then she disappears. Like, she disappears hard. Like, it's like that's her fiance, and she's not like part of fixing this. It's really weird. But or even like, is she going to make this decision or that decision? I wish they had played that up, especially with the actor they have in Strange New World. She's doing such an amazing job. But Michelle Barrett at least did get to shine. I did like how Kirk was stuck on the planet, and then and then Spock, and who is my highlight character in this, was able to kind of figure out kind of what's going on.
Mine was Kirk.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Kirk was a good one. Kirk shines in a lot of these, and he's supposed to. He's the captain. So overall, you like this episode, though? Oh no, you didn't like this episode. What's your takeaway from it, though?
No, I'm not gonna say it. Don't trust old fiancés who like robots.
Don't trust. No, How about this? Let's tweak it just a little bit. Don't trust old flames.
Who like
Because
robots.
I wouldn't even say robots because you can say salt-sucking monsters too. So let's just say
No, the
don't
old
trust old
flame is the salt-sucking monster. They don't like the salt-sucking monster. They are the salt-sucking. Who like robots or salt.
True. All right, fair. All right. Season 1, Episode 8, Miri. The Enterprise discovers a planet exactly like Earth, but the only inhabitants are children who contract a fatal disease upon entering puberty. It was this all right. It was weird. It was a weird one. I didn't mind the kids. I didn't mind what they were trying to figure out. Like it was a well told story, but like there were a lot of acting choices in this that seemed really peculiar. Maybe by today's standards, maybe even by the 80s standards, but like I'm not like pointing anything out that like happened that was big, but like it just seemed like the interaction seemed off between them, not in a suspicious way, but like Kirk talking to Miriam, like you're not so much even talking to her like a dad, you're not talking to her like somebody like you would inappropriately want to have some sort of relationship with. You're talking to her almost like you're a power, you're so much powerful than these children, and it almost felt like everyone just felt these children should be subservient to them. Whereas I felt like, okay, we have to figure out the problem of puberty and then teach these kids to survive on this planet, because ideally that's what you're supposed to do, right? What was your takeaway from this show?
People don't always make it.
No one ever makes it. Like, ever in life. Like, I'm going to tell you right now, that's why they call it that, because it ends. Like, so nobody's going to make it. Tommy, I hate to break it to you. I hope for a very, 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 very long time. But we ain't going to make it. We're not going to be there. We're not going to be there to see the sunset in the end.
Although with the way humanity's going, we might.
Well, that's just our ends, though. But all right. So, okay. I get that. So that's your takeaway, and you said Kirk. Who's your shining character in this? I think mine's Kirk.
Spock.
Really? Why Spock?
I like Spock. He was good in this. This is probably his best episode in my opinion. Wow, except okay. no, there were some episodes where he was amazing in. But this is Spock was really the only good part of this episode. I think he's the one that brought it up.
Thinking about his when I'm going to change mine up. Mine's Spock. That is a good one, because now I'm thinking about some of the choices that they both made, and I think that's what threw me off about Kirk in this episode. Is like it just didn't seem like natural choices that the Kirk we've seen in the past like 7 episodes or 6 episodes, really. Oh no, 7. We're 8 in, but 7 episodes. It just didn't feel like a choices he would make. It felt odd. All right, let's move on to season 1, episode 9, Dagger of the Mind. Kirk and psychiatrist Helen Noel are trapped on a maximum security penal colony that experiments with mind control, and Spock must use Vulcan mind meld to find a way to save them. I think this is the first time we see Vulcan mind meld, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think it is. Yes, I'm pretty sure it is. Unless they showed it in Miri. Unless they did it in Miri for when the kid died.
I don't remember him using a mind meld in that moment. That's the only thing for me. This episode was okay. I did like the mind meld being added to it. And that it became sort of a thing. Like, granted, a lot of this stuff was to help save on, having to add special effects or do stuff like that. So they made up certain things. But that's why I think the mind meld has become so rich. It's been in part of the lore for so long. It's cool to see this. That's really the biggest part of this episode for me. What did you think about this episode?
It was good. I think it's better than the past few episodes.
Yeah, I'll agree to that. It is a good episode, but it wasn't like a blowaway episode for me.
Not like 2 of the episodes that we've seen so far. And they were back to back.
Yeah. So yeah, I think going in this one was good, but I got to tell you, one of my favorite episodes is coming up after this. But before we get there, who's your highlight character for this one? Spock.
Kirk/Spock. I couldn't take
double. And what's your takeaway from
it? Don't go into random machines that apparently can save people from being insane.
Well, if I can add just a little bit more to that, how about always enter suspicious, like we were talked about from the first episode. I love the hopefulness, but there are certain times where if you trust your instincts and if you trust your gut instincts, another word for it, I feel like you entered with with some sort of, not suspicion, but like, okay, I'm gonna be careful, like a carefulness to it. you can eliminate a lot of these issues. You can eliminate a lot of these issues. So from Tommy's takeaway, if you could take that, if you go into a situation, make sure you do it in a way where you're careful and you are show common sense. All right, now, this is one of my this might be my favorite, but we're gonna get into it a little bit more.
Season 1, Episode 10, The Corvo Maneuver. After the Enterprise is forced to destroy the dangerous marker buoy, a gigantic alien ship arrives to capture and condemn the crew as trespassers.
I love this episode because it was all a contained episode. It was a lot of bridge episode. Like, and it wasn't just on a bridge, but it was figuring it out. Like the maneuver portion of it is like they call it that because it's made famous by the pilots and the captain who can do it. I just thought it was just wonderful. I thought this was a terrific episode that really put them up against a force that they had to outthink in some fashion. And I love those types of episodes. I think that's what Star Trek is truly all about, is outthinking every situation, which they do. But you didn't need any like being brute about it is what got them in trouble in the first place. So having that juxtaposition of walking away from it from a smarter standpoint, I dug it. I was like, this is cool. This is a good one. And Kirk is my shining character in this. Who's your shining character? What's your takeaway?
Mine is Spock.
Spock was good in this too, to really kind of rethink things. And what's your takeaway from
it? Don't destroy giant things.
Yeah, don't. If I can add my own little spin on that, is yes. Again, treat things carefully. Like if you come across something, I'm not saying that you have to trust it. I'm not saying you have to jump right on board with it or anything like that, but maybe don't destroy it. Never know what the biggest things, like don't kill a baby snake. You never know where mommy is, sort of thing. I got that feel from this. It was like, you screwed mine, now I'm going to come get you, and I'm bigger. And they had, and it put the bullies in their place, because that's essentially when they blew that up, they were sort of bullying it. Like, granted, I understood the reasoning, but then the big ship came and was like, we don't like how you did that, and they had to. It almost humbled them a little bit. They had to think their way out.
You know what the funny thing is about this episode? Is the ship is so huge, and then it's an alien half the size of every human on the ship.
I did that, but I think that reinforces my idea of like they were the bullies at first. They did something, and then this gigantic ship being run by this tiny alien, and how it ended in peace. They were able to just be like, hey, all right, let's get along, sorry for what we did, blah blah blah, and it ended in peace, and everybody walked away well, in certain spots. But all right, let's go on to season 1, episode 11, The Menagerie. Very, very famous episode. This is part 1. This is a 2-part episode. It was November 17th and November 24th, 1966, respectively. They came out. Now, the reason I'm making sure to bring this up is because The Menagerie took the cage, the original, and this is how they kind of incorporated Captain Pike into the main series and such. And back in the day, it took that show and then it interspersed it into another story where we're finding out that Spock, where Captain Pike has been severely injured in a big explosion, and he lives his life in severe pain, and Spock is working his way sneakily through to try and get Captain Pike back to was it Talosian 4? Talos 4, but they are Talosians. Talos 4, to kind of have him live life out there in peace with I forget the woman's name in the story, but so he can live a life of peace and not feel pain. He loves his captain that much. He served with him for 10 years. That's what he's doing. So he's committing a high act of treason, mutiny, and such. He steals the ship. Kirk has to kind of go and get him down and figure this out. But we're getting those stories from the cage interspersed with this. So that's how we're getting the connection from the pilot to this one, and a little more backstory, especially for Spock. Spock is my shining character in this episode, because yes, he is sort of working as an adversary, but I really liked what he was doing here. Who's your shining character, and what's your takeaway?
Also Spock. Stuff that looks wrong on the outside might not be.
Like it a lot. And I like how Captain Pike was still telling him, no, don't do this. I will live a life of pain without you having to suffer. You're too good of an officer. Like he doesn't say that, but you get that whole feel from everything that's happening. And then we get to episode 2 of this 2-part series. It's up season 1, episode 12, The Menagerie, part 2. And now it's the court-martial episode. Spock is caught. They stop him from getting to Talos 4, which is completely cut off from everyone. And now it's a matter of, it's almost like a desperate plea to make sure that that Pike can go down there and live in peace. Once they figure that out, and once the reveal happens, and I'm not going to ruin it here for anyone, we are able to have Pike have some reprieve from his injuries.
Mhm.
And it's quite wonderful. And I love these 2 episodes. I think these are fantastic episodes that show a lot of growth in character. For the second episode, Kirk is more my guy for this, my shining character. And I don't have a takeaway, but what's your takeaway? Don't get court-martialed.
I don't have one either.
Don't get court-martialed.
Yeah.
Don't go on trial for stealing a ship. All right, I'm good. I like that. I like that.
Don't steal the flagship of a galactic empire because you want to go to a planet, because you want to go on vacation, because you want your friend to
You don't want to go on vacation without his buddy. Shut up.
Because he wants his friend to get a vacation.
No, he wants. That is so an oversimplification of the highest regard. All right, let's move on. Season 1, episode 13, The Conscience of the King. While Captain Kirk investigates whether an actor's actually presumed dead mass murder, a mysterious assailant is killing people who could identify the fugitive. So just to kind of give a bit of a backstory, this came out on December 8th, 1966. This was a traveling theater group, came onto the Enterprise. They were going to travel with them to another planet, their next destination. But while they do it, they would perform and have the same, kind of just have like entertainment on the ship while they were doing it. And one of the main actors, Kirk is haunted by as one of the worst human beings to go to come out of the war. From early on, that he was like a huge war criminal who killed many people. And Kirk, he went missing. He was presumed dead, but Kirk had always been haunted by this guy in his existence. So when he sees him, it brings it back. So it becomes like a desperate search to try and figure out if it's him or not. But then you have this whodunit of like, who's on the ship killing people? Is it this guy? Is it him? I love the whodunit nature of this. I thought it was really well played. I thought the acting was great. My character for this is Kirk, because the intensity he showed, plus on top of the maintaining, like, I know what's happening, and the twist through it. What did you think of this episode, and what's your takeaway?
It was good. It wasn't great. Kirk was my shining character.
I'd argue that this was a great episode, personally. I would hard argue that.
And my takeaway is don't trust weird actors who look like mass murderers when people are dying on your starship.
All right, I'm not asking you your thing anymore. I'm just gonna get mine from now on. You get fake.
But they're amazing takeaways.
Yeah. They're not bad takeaways.
They're all life lessons that you would definitely want.
These are life lessons if you're actually on a starship. Don't let them take your ship. Okay. All right. Well, our final episode for this episode that we'll be talking about, and then make sure you join back next week, where we're going to be going after the last 15 episodes of the season. And that is Season 1, Episode 14, Balance of Terror. The Enterprise must decide on its response when a Romulan ship makes a destructively hostile armed probe of Federation territory. I thought this was a great episode. It came out December 15th, 1966. It really showed the scope of what Star Trek can be. There's a lot of war elements to it. I thought they did a great job. The actors, especially with the stunts and such, the stuntmen were fantastic. But then when you get to a lot of things between Mark Leonard's character, who's playing the Romulan captain, versus Kirk, and they're back and forth. There's so much respect there. Now, Mark Leonard is famous for having played Sarek, Spock's father, later in this series and on TNG and more. So this was wonderful to see him in a different element. This is the introduction of the Romulans. We start to see a little bit more of the Romulans because we really only touched down just a tiny bit in Enterprise. They were present, but it wasn't a lot we got. This is a little bit more, and I really enjoyed that fact to this. What did you think, Tom? What did you think of this episode?
It was a fun episode to me. I think it was kind of like a break almost, because there were some amazing like cinematic episodes. This was a cinematic episode, but it was a fun episode. It was, there were some good parts about it. I didn't particularly love it per se, but it was a good episode. It's just not exactly up my alley.
Well, what are some elements you didn't like about it? Maybe some other ideas to it.
I feel like they could have done a little bit more with the Romulans, I feel like, because it's almost like you only introduced them as the war species. I feel like if they had introduced them just even a little bit in a different episode, and then you have the big Romulan episode, then that would have worked. But because I feel like this episode would have been better if before it you had an episode where the Romulans weren't the big bad guy, but they were a bad guy, and you know what the Romulans are, instead of giving you.
I would argue that the Romulans for a long time will remain the bad guy. You know, a lot of mistrust, a lot of different things that go into elements there, but elements that go into play there. But I would argue that I'm glad they never showed a Romulan in this series until Mark Leonard, because that is essentially the first one. Now, granted, we watched Enterprise and we've watched other episodes of Star Trek and movies and stuff, so we have a base of what the Romulans are. But for the first one to have a sign of respect for Kirk, where anybody who's watching this in the order that it came out, like that's like, okay, it adds that element of like they're not so bad. There's good Romulans, there's bad Romulans, and I like that because we do get heavy into the bad stuff that they do later on, you know, even the stuff that takes place before. I did like the episode, and finishing off on this, I thought this was a good one for this episode to kind of end it on. I did have a good time. My shining character for this was Kirk. I thought there was a really good back and forth between he and Mark Leonard's Romulan character. How about you? What did you think?
It's yeah, this is definitely Kirk for the shining character. Mark Leonard did amazing as the Romulan captain. I kind of felt like instead of having just that one, I feel like they should have had another Romulan who played a decent role, because it was really just that one and then his crew. I didn't really see anybody else who had a big role other than Mark Leonard and the bridge crew.
Yeah, no. So I mean, those are the big ones. So like, Kirk is definitely, I think, the shining character in this because it was meant to be for that. Any takeaways you have from it?
Not really. No, I don't really get a takeaway from this episode. Do you?
Well, a lot of the takeaways I have from this episode maybe aren't so much like inspirational or anything, but I do. There's some stuff that I really like. The elements of, the sort of putting the face of the captains at the front of the war. So we're really getting the face of humanity. I thought that was a really good filmmaking choice for this. I thought the two captains who are sympathetic in our eyes, and we do actually care about them, but they stand on different sides. But there's such a respect, as a well-written sort of form to this episode. I think that's what really dragged me to it. Was like, this is a formidable captain to go up against Kirk. Like, I think if they had a ship that was just as good, probably would have won, you know, because there was just that good, but they had the killer instinct, whereas Kirk is a little bit less, you know, well, more so, I would say, not maybe a little bit, but, you know, a good amount. Yeah, there's that respect of life where the Romulans, it almost seemed like Mark Leonard's character had that same respect, but like he grew up just different. He grew up in a different world, so that warlike world. So I dug that about that. But I thought this was a good episode to end off on, and we're going to do just that. So, guys, thank you so much for joining in on this episode of Warp Factor Fiction. I'm your host, Mick Manhattan, joined as always by Lieutenant Junior Grade Tommy Manhattan. Thank you so much for joining in. Of course. Well, it's your show too, my friend. So we'll be back next week with an all new episode covering the second half of Star Trek TOS Season 1. And then we'll be going on to Season 2 in February, Season 3 in March, the animated series in April. And then for the next 6 months, we will be talking about the movies. We're going to have special live events with guests and stuff to talk about each of those movies. We're going to have a really good time doing it. So hopefully you're joining in. But if you want to see these first, you want to be the first ones up to go and check it out, you got to join our Patreon. There's a free tier, so you can follow us for free, get our updates there and such. But if you want a little bit more like Warp Factor Fiction, other shows that we do that are exclusive on there, you know, we do special merch drops, things like that. Plenty of other stuff to go around as well. I think you guys might have a good time, and it all goes back to support the Scene Snobs and Warp Factor Fiction. Guys, thank you again so much. I'm Mick. That's Tommy. Until next time, like I always say, be kind, stay classy, take care of yourselves because that's important. And Tommy Bahama, what are you going to say?
Live long and prosper.
That's right. Take care, everybody.